Welcome to Just Healing, where we rediscover humanity in our conversations around trauma and celebrate all the unique ways we love and heal. I'm one of your Season 2 co-hosts, Dr. Debra. Trauma doesn't exist in a bubble. Healing shouldn't either. Let's listen, let's learn, let's heal. I want to introduce Dr. Richard Sinicola. We will be talking to Ashley Easter. This week, we're going to be talking to Crystal Flores, who's my baby. So I am here today with Al Edwards, retired Captain Ann Young, and Dr. Greg Kaysen. So today is Jace Barron. And now you're going to meet Michael Munson. Thank you for tuning in. I am just so overjoyed to be part of this podcast. So with that, let's listen, let's learn, let's heal.
Both as a priest and a psychologist, my first and foremost role is to heal. Many of us were questioning, is there a place in the church for divorced Catholics, for women, for gays and lesbians? And of course, that did not sit well with my superiors when I started to question that. So I was asked to take a sabbatical. And then at the end of that year, I thought I would be coming back, but they essentially said, have you changed your opinion about things? And I said, actually, no. The year off made me question them even more. Being gay and lesbian is not synonymous with being a pedophile. And that's what they often do not understand. And so it was essentially assumed that I didn't have a vocation for the priesthood. So I left the seminary. Obviously, being a married gay man, I couldn't go to the Roman seminary. So I studied with the Episcopal Church, and then I found the Liberal Catholic Church. I'm now with the American National Catholic Church, which is an interesting group. They came into existence about 20 years ago, mainly as a response to the clergy crisis within the Catholic Church. But we have a very distinct philosophy. The emphasis is not on shame and sin. The emphasis is on forgiveness and healing. We do have married clergy and we do have gay and lesbian clergy because we don't see gender or sexual orientation as an issue for one's vocation.
That's diversity. That's about moving from something else.
What the Roman Church, I think, is failing to address, what hasn't happened in a lot of groups that have been traumatized by groups, for example, within the church, is that when you attempt to have these dialogues, the church gets very defensive. And when the dialogue shuts down, because historically they have not dealt with it very well. They have, for the most part, not admitted to culpability. We'll compensate and we'll make sure that none of this happens going forward. But is that really enough? Nobody will just push the button of change, push the button that will destroy that system that's in place that sort of gives these people a pass. And that's what isn't happening. You're not saying up front, well, here's the problem. It had been happening in other Christian churches and Protestant churches and some Jewish synagogues. We started to see, oh, wait a minute, it's also basketball coaches and football coaches and scoutmasters and other people who have opportunities to work closely with children. And so as bad as this whole crisis has been, it was a can that finally had to be opened. And now the healing can begin.
Right. And I think that you saying just that, is going to help a lot of people because you are sitting here taking responsibility. This did happen. You're saying that. Some people just want someone to say from the faith, this did happen.
So when people think of the word cult, there's actually a lot of definitions for the word cult. What I'm talking about when I say a cult is a high control group, a group that really forces you to bend to their rules. It's often very isolating. There's generally a lot of manipulation, and in many cases, there can be abuse and different types of misconduct. Cults actually exist on a spectrum. So not every cult is going to look like a Jim Jones or Scientology or something like that. Many times cults are hidden in plain sight, and they can show up in a lot of different venues in a lot of different ways.
There's political cults. There are people who are just bound like the doomsday preppers, right? But now in the age of the internet, like it's taken on a whole new flavor.
There's political cults, there's religious cults. I've seen cults pop up in, all different forms of groups, even groups that initially may have started as a good thing, like AA groups. And it's not necessarily the whole organization, but like whenever you have people together, if someone appoints himself the leader and then causes others to follow them in a certain way. So the BITE model, each letter of the word BITE stands for a different type of control. So B is for behavior control. And there's a whole list of different types of ways that could show up. The I is for information control. A lot of times cults not only want to control how you act and behave, but they also want to control the kind of information you have access to and the kind of information you put out about their group. T is for thought control. So it's not good enough in most cults for you to just be behaving according to their rules, but you also need to think like them. And they'll often use different thought-stopping behaviors to cause you not to think outside the box, not have influence by other people, so you really are indoctrinated in this one way. So that's BIT, and then the E stands for emotional control. So this can be emotional manipulation, this can be guilting and blaming and shaming, fear tactics, those kinds of things. But in this BITE control model, each category has a long list. And if somebody thinks, I don't know if I'm in a cult or not, it seems like there's some fishy things going on, I would encourage them to look that up, kind of go through that list, because it really can help you determine whether the group you're in is healthy or not. If you have been in a high control group, whether you want to give the name cult to it or not, I realize how confusing and overwhelming it can be, particularly when you're thinking of leaving. When you first leave, there is so much help and support outside. It was hard leaving. There are consequences for leaving. But I'm so much happier today. And I found so many people who've gone through similar things, and you won't be alone when you leave. It's not as bad or scary out here. In fact, it's really great.
There's a lot of different cultures, different regions, and where I'm coming from is I'm Mexican. I identify as Mexican/Chicana. The three big reasons why I think that men don't disclose, they either don't disclose for a very long time, or a lot of them, they never disclose. In our culture, you sweep things under the rug. You don't talk about these things. You don't talk openly, not even about anything sexual. Yeah, no, it's taboo. You just don't go there. And also, family secrets, you don't put your business out there. You don't talk to other people about it. It's something that brings up some shame. You don't want to bring shame to like the family. So that's a big one.
Mm-hmm.
The second one is a lot of times the perpetrator is in the family.
Yes.
And it's usually, it's close family. So, uncles, cousins, parents. So that's another big one. And then the third thing is masculinity. Mm-hmm. I know because I've talked to male survivors and I hear what they're telling me. And my understanding is that like they were afraid that someone was going to question their sexuality, their masculinity, if they were sexually abused, especially by a male, that they were demasculated somehow. There's so many families that have all of this trauma and exposure to violence. It's different because there's so many layers, and sometimes the person isn't even aware until they start opening up about it because they're so used to it. This is just their life. They don't think that it's not normal, and they don't realize how much they have been affected. Don't judge people. You don't know what they've been through. Especially people, if you're not from that culture, if you don't understand, but you see somebody dressed a certain way, talking a certain way, living their life a certain way, there's a reason why. There's always a reason why somebody behaves or does what they do.
be mindful of that.
You had a criminal empire. You had a criminal organization that was actually trafficking in young girls, in young Black girls. When people decide that they're not going to come forward, this kind of behavior just perpetuates. And in this case, they were taking direct orders from R. Kelly, meaning the people that worked for him in this organization. And let's keep in mind that every organization has a culture. And every organization's culture is defined by its organizational values, underlying values. And in this case, the values of the organization were dictated by R. Kelly.
But the one thing I was watching in this is that people knew this was happening, right? And then people were just turning the other way. But there's something that people don't realize about minorities when they get famous or they make it, right? We kind of rally around to keep them where they're at because, oh my God, they got somewhere. And I'm wondering, could that have been going on and creating a different organizational climate within this problem?
It absolutely created an organizational climate of acceptance. The longer this behavior continued, and the longer R. Kelly felt invincible, and the longer he felt as though he could not be touched, especially after being acquitted of the first trial, they protected him at every turn, and it was driven by greed, it was driven by money, it was driven by power. And these are the same kinds of dynamics that you see in organizations. You see leaders, senior leaders in organizations. I'm talking about from the top down, who drive the organization based on personal need. Our society as a whole has this very peculiar relationship with those that we deem to be celebrities, that we deem to be stars. And we seem to want to give them a pass, even when the behaviors that they exhibit are behaviors that we know are wrong. We have to make sure that when we are working with youth, when we are working with the children, that we are always, as a community and as a society, that we are instilling in them the values that are important. We're making sure that they are given support. We need to educate, we need to train, and we need to develop leaders. And we need to develop leaders at a very, very young age so that they understand the value of people, they understand the value of just human nature, so that they are not making the same mistakes that others have made.
Well, I tell you, Dr. Debra, you just never know when you're going to get that radio call, and it's on you and your partner to respond. It's not something we wake up every morning and say, gosh, darn, I think we'll respond to an active shooter situation today. We just don't, we never know when it's going to happen. So we always have to be prepared. We always have to be prepared. And part of our preparation, not only in handling the situation once we arrive, but being prepared ourselves mentally and physically to handle the situation.
I'm listening to you talk, and I am thinking of the Columbine incident. You walk in there, you're a police officer, and you see this scene, right? What is something that stands out? What is a memory that you have that stands out in one of these situations?
It's just all the bodies, all the life stands out to me. Now, could officers have responded quicker? We get there as fast as we can. And it's just the life that's lost stands out to me. And how could this happen? Why did this happen? What happened? What signs were missed? Especially if the active shooter is a student that goes to school. Could more have been done?
Do you have to take away some of your humanity when you're doing that?
No. Remember what the mission is: to stop the action from occurring. Because the longer it goes on, the more lives are going to be lost. Your humanity is doing your job. There's a threat at the school. Got to stop the threat from occurring.
Well, fear is so powerful. Fear is the number one emotion that can motivate us. It is the most powerful emotion. So if people can gin up fear in somebody, so if the news is going to present scary news, we want to watch it because we want to be prepared. We want to find out what happened. If someone's saying there's a threat coming, we want to watch it because we've got to go get, our guns ready or something. I don't know. But it's that people just keep ginning up more and more fear, and people who are watching don't realize they're being played a little bit, because you're right. Most of life is not fearful. There are things, yes, but most of the time we can embrace each other. We are so skewed to look at things in such a negative way. People who are survivors have suffered trauma, and people who suffer trauma don't let the trauma doesn't end when the physical act ends. The trauma continues emotional and physical in the body, and it comes up in their mind in repeated thoughts, in the way they act, in the way they hold themselves back, in the way they might hide. So I want to help people who are survivors to actually help them see a different pathway. If there's one thing I want people to take away, is to be able to be compassionate toward yourself for your shortcomings, for your difficulties, for the past that you've suffered, for the future that you're yet to have, and to allow yourself the grace to just be in the world, whether you're just hanging out on the couch or, going into a job, or you're doing something rather profound. That we all need to be more forgiving of ourselves and just kind of walk around and understand we're all in the same soup together and that we're all connected.
I think that people have been taught that their power is limited. And that is why, people have become so fragile because of what the world has taught them. And, this place is a beautiful place, but it's also a very hard place. And it's hard because people make it hard. It wasn't always that way. And so, like we mentioned before, having grace with people and humanizing people's experience would really go a long way.
It can really go a long way and just change the perspective. We all decided, to get along? Just get along, but just be mindful, right?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Such a big word. Like mindfulness, just cognizant, aware, where's your head at? And he was just saying that, none of this is real. It's all made up. And, once you kind of have that in your brain, we're all in borrowed time. You just keep living your life and it's going to be okay. It's always going to be okay. I want people to take away that their story matters. Their story is beautiful. And no matter how traumatic it may seem or be, it happened, and you can heal from it, and not only heal from it, but it can make you an even more powerful person.
How do I listen, right? How am I validating survivors? How am I doing that, as well as how are they listening? And I guess, when I think about this question, I'm like, I care a lot about survivors. I care a lot. And I hope that shines through in everything that I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
So if a survivor's listening, I hope that they know that my care, my compassion is part of how I'm listening to them, because I'm kind of holding the space for them, even though we're not having a dialogue in that moment, like in a podcast, we're not dialoguing. But I hope that they feel that container is a little bit of a space for them, that I'm listening. And, as I think about this, it's like, well, how else do people feel heard? They feel heard because they're believed, they're validated. They can go, oh my God, that's what happened to me, or that's like me, or that's what happened to my friend. They can feel affirmed. They can go, yeah, wow. Yeah, that was normal. I mean, that's not normal, but this is a normal response to trauma. I think all of those things help people feel listened to. even when we are directly going back and
Right.
forth with them.
Just our body
So-
language, or just how we say the words, or the words we choose.
If we have compassion with each other, if we laugh with each other, that helps us learn because it makes it real. It makes it human. It makes it alive.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Just Healing. Join us for new episodes throughout 2024, where we will continue to spread the message of hope and healing and welcome Just Healing's 3 new co-hosts, Michael Munson, Dr. Greg Kaysen, and Jace Barron. It's going to be an exciting year. And remember, you are worthy, trauma doesn't define us, and healing is a collective journey. This podcast is produced by myself, Dr. Debra, in collaboration with MenHealing, a national nonprofit dedicated to helping provide accessible resources and community for any male or male-identifying survivors of sexual harm. MenHealing's aim is to help heal, inspire, and break isolation for survivors. You can donate, check out our healing events, videos, and other resources at menhealing.org. If you or someone you know has been a victim of sexual harm and you need to talk to someone, RAIN can help. Call their National Sexual Assault Hotline to speak with a trained staff member who can provide you with confidential crisis support. It's free, confidential, and 24/7. Call 1-800-656-4673.